So last time we talked about the 13 big hindrances that prevent somebody from being ordained as a monastic, at least in this lifetime. So kind of means not in this lifetime, perhaps future lifetimes. And so we begin to see here that, to join the Sangha is a privilege, and there has to be certain qualities in an individual to be able to join the Sangha. That it's not something that we can go to and say, I demand that you admit me. Yeah, it's, it's something that we have to have the qualities, and especially show the motivation and the sincerity in our approach, so that the Sangha takes our request for ordination seriously. Yeah? Because lots of people come and ask, and as we've seen, people with not such good motivations come, and so the Sangha has to be really discriminating to make sure that the purpose for which the Buddha set the Sangha up is being fulfilled. And the purpose is to enable, well, we went through the benefits of the precepts before, but in short, it's to, enable the Dharma to exist for a long time. And in order to do that, to create an atmosphere that's good for people's practice, and where they can give back to society and help others as well. Okay? So it's it's often translated, pratimoksha, one translation is individual liberation. So we think, I'm an individual, I want my liberation. And so that it's all about, individuals' liberation. And it's not, if we really look underneath it, there's another current going on that's really looking in the long term for the benefit of all beings, and even within this lifetime, to benefit more. The purpose of the Sangha isn't just to benefit the people in the Sangha, it's to benefit all of society. Okay, so then there's 16 minor hindrances that prevent somebody from ordaining, as long as they have these particular hindrances. If they're able to free themselves from these hindrances, then they can request ordination. Okay, so the first one is being a slave. So, of course, this country has too much history with slavery, and it's prohibited now. But at the time of the Buddha, it was alive, and in many countries, even today, it's there. You could really even include in here somebody who's being trafficked and who doesn't have their own freedom, who's under the control of a pimp or who knows what that would limit their freedom. And you have to be out of that kind of situation in order to join the monastery, to join the Sangha. The reason is, the story behind it is that there was, at the time of the Buddha, one man who was a slave. He ordained as a bhikshu, and when he was going on alms, his master recognized him as a bhikshu and completely exploded and said, you're my slave, and how dare you be a bhikshu, and you've got to come back and work for me, and everything like that. And the people, some of the people around said, wait a minute, you can't just say that, because the king said that we have to respect and support the Sangha. But the guy is saying, but the Sangha's my slave, he owes something to me. And so, although the master eventually freed that bhikshu, still he was very angry, and he insulted the Sangha, and he said, all the Sangha are slaves, and they all want to escape their obligations, and that's why they're ordaining. Yeah? So the point here is that if somebody has obligations of some sort, they shouldn't seek ordination to avoid those obligations. Yeah. And so, for example, if somebody has alimony payments or child support payments, and they think, well, if I join the Sangha, then, my spouse won't be able to collect because, I'll be a Sangha and it'll look bad in public for them to do this, and besides, people will know I don't have much money. Well, that kind of person, if they're ordaining with that kind of motivation, that's not correct, There's no sincerity, and they're also really trying to, what do you call it, scam the system? Yeah, and neglect their own responsibilities. So the Buddha was never one to support people who are neglecting responsibilities. Okay, but however, if if you're being trafficked, if you have responsibilities, you fulfill them, then it's fine to ordain. Then the second one of the 16 is somebody who is a thief. Okay, so actually we have precepts that if somebody is a thief or committed any other kind of crime that whereby the government, the law enforcement will get involved, that we can't ordain them. Okay, so the story behind this, okay, is that many women wearing fine ornaments attended a special event in Vassali, and a thief stole their jewels and escaped to another land. And hiding in a temple, the thief, it was a woman, shaved her head and put on the robes, and then was ordained as a bhikshuni. And the way it started out in early times, the Sangha was usually not under the influence of secular law. They were under the influence of the Sangha precepts, and they had to follow the precepts. If they weren't doing that properly, they were evicted from the Sangha. So the king usually, if somebody in the Sangha was a thief, the king didn't mess with them because he knew that the Sangha would be taking care of it. Okay, this actual separation between religious and secular law, it existed in China as well. The emperor didn't prosecute Sangha members. And so you'll see in the Chinese tradition, they have the custom of burning 3 or sometimes 6 or 9 or 12 dots, on the crown of your head. And there has, mine are all overgrown now, but some of the others, did you 2 have yours done? Yeah. So you can see it more freshly. But the reason for it, there's a few different reasons. One is as an offering of your body to the Buddha. A second was to develop your willingness to undergo pain for the benefit of sentient beings. And the third was it demarcates you as a Sangha member. The idea being that regular criminals would not want to burn their head to avoid the law. So they wouldn't have the courage to do that. And so therefore they couldn't escape into the Sangha to avoid the secular law enforcement. Okay. But so that was in China. Here in India, I don't think they did that. But still, it was the same thing that the king usually didn't, take care when a Sangha member considered committed a very bad crime. So, yeah, okay. So the king had prohibited the arrest and trial of bhikshus and bhikshunis by the civil government. And when the police caught this woman, who was the thief of all the other ladies' ornaments, he simply scolded her, and the citizens were very upset by this and said, well, all the bhikshunis are criminals and they hide in the Sangha. So you can see how, this is society, isn't it? One person does something wrong and the whole group gets blamed. So that happened here, and so from that time on, then the people didn't respect the Sangha. They refused to support them, and the lay people stopped even listening to Dharma teachings themselves because they thought, oh, all these people must be thieves who are in the Sangha. Okay, so Venerable Wu Yin, in teaching this, she asks a very interesting question. So she says, who do you think in this situation should be reprimanded? The person who ordained the thief or the thief herself? Yeah, so whose responsibility is this? It's kind of both people's responsibility, isn't it? Yeah, and so the ordaining master needs to check and make sure that this person doesn't have a criminal record, that you're not going to have the police arriving at the monastery saying, look, I have a what do you call it? Yeah, I have an old warrant for the arrest of so-and-so, and you know, my goodness, can you imagine the local newspaper story about that and what would happen? So it would be really a pretty big mess. Okay, she comments, even now sometimes criminals seek to hide their illegal financial dealings and they escape to another country and request ordination. So we haven't had anybody come here for that reason. But, you know, it's possible that somebody would do that. You know, try and change their identity, change their name. Okay, so again, the whole idea here is that the people who broke the law, they owe a debt to society, so they have to repay the debt they owe to society before they can ordain. So it's similar to the one of being a slave. You have to clear up any previous responsibilities that you had, fair or unfair. You have to clear them up before ordaining, because otherwise it really risks dragging the whole Sangha in. Yeah, I remember some years ago when I was in Dharamsala in the 80s, there was one Western monk. Somebody ordained him, one of the Tibetan lamas. He used to, what do you call it, expose himself? Flasher. Yeah, the flasher. So, you know, here he was in the Sangha, and occasionally, you know, he would go out and do that. And, you know, that didn't work too well. Yeah, it really created some problems, and I don't know what happened to him eventually, because it was in India, and I don't know what happened to him. Yeah, but yeah, that kind of thing was not so good. Yeah, and the Western Sangha already had difficulties with image in the Tibetan community, and then you have somebody doing that, and not to mention how unpleasant it was for other people. Okay, then the third one is being in debt. Okay, so this one too is designed to prevent people from ordaining, to avoid responsibilities in society. So in order to ordain, somebody has to be free of debt. Yeah, that means all debt. So no mortgages, no credit card debt, no any kind of debt. All of that has to be completely cleared up. Yeah, and I know that in France some years ago, when I was living at the monastery there, the nunnery. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, there was one Frenchman who was ordained, and one day, I guess it must have been the police who showed up at Nalanda Monastery and said, you know, there's somebody here named so-and-so, and he owes, you know, we're trying to collect the debts that he owes other people. And the Sangha knew not, they were shocked to find out that this man who had ordained not long ago was, you know, being sought by, I guess it was a collection agency. Yeah, or maybe if it's really bad, it's the police get involved. But again, it created a lot of disturbance at the monastery, and certainly, you know, can you imagine the police or the collection agency people going home and said, oh, there was this monk and, you know, he owed this money and we had to go do that, you know. It's not good. So somebody has to be completely cleared up of all their debts. Yeah. Again, some teachers are more strict about this one, some aren't. Yeah, at the Abbey, we're quite clear about it. It has to be cleared up.
Is it inappropriate then for a Sangha member to go into debt?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Sangha members should not go into debt. And so that's why, okay, so the Abbey takes care of people. That's one situation. But if you ordain with another teacher who, you know, and you have to really check this out because most Tibetan lamas who ordain people, they, you know, you're on your own financially. So it's nice for you in the sense that there's no age limit. You don't have to live in the monastery. You can live on your own. You can kind of be half lay person, half monastic. You know, you have a lot more freedom than if you're living in a monastery. But you have to be financially responsible. And for a Sangha member to go in debt is like, you know, that's not nice. Yeah, that wouldn't be appropriate at all. So then you have the situation, well, then the Sangha members work, yeah, which is difficult because then you don't actually get to be really a monastic. You're basically living a lay life and then coming home and putting on robes. Yeah, it's a difficult situation. But some people, you know, yeah, people make different choices for different reasons. Okay, yeah, so we also at the Abbey, we want that very clear because otherwise somebody's mind isn't completely here. Their mind is, well, you know, I still owe money on my credit card, I still owe money on my car, or on my this, or on my that, and then their minds aren't here. So all that has to, we say everything has to be cleared up. If you have a house, it has to be sold. If you have a car, you either donate it or you sell it, you know, but all that has to be taken care of first. And it just helps. Okay. Then the fourth one is that disqualifies someone is being under the age of 20. Yeah. So Tibetans usually say that you're 1 year old when you're born. I guess they count the time in the womb. Yeah, so, but being under the age of 20. So what happened was some young boys came and they ordained, and they were young, and, you know, they had a precept you can't eat at night, so they were crying at night, and they missed their family, and, you know, they couldn't endure sleeping outdoors and everything like that. And so the Buddha said that they shouldn't be fully ordained until they were at least 20 years old. And he also said that they should not be given the novice precepts, Shramanera precepts, unless they were old enough to scare a crow, which is somewhere around 8 years old. Okay, and so then with those novice precepts, those are easier to keep. They still had the one not to eat in the evening, but I guess was somehow they made it easier for the little kids. Okay, and then also because people who are that young are not mature enough to really understand the Dharma. So to take the full ordination, you have to basically be an adult. In the Tibetan community, they have a lot of the kids who ordain when they're children and they grow up in the monastery. And in one way, I mean, in old Tibet, that worked fantastic because the monastery was your educational system. Yeah, if you wanted your child to have an education, there wasn't, you know, a secular school system really set up. So you sent them to the monastery. And also being in the monastery in old Tibet was a way for families, you know, if their child was a good member, to rise up somehow. The Sangha equalized people from different social classes. Otherwise, it was quite difficult. Okay, so now in exile, they still ordain people when they're young, but they're getting fewer and fewer kids, which is harder on the monasteries because they need to train people, have them do all this memorization work since the time they're very little. Yeah, and so now children have many more things they can do, and the parents used to send their brightest son to the monastery. Now they send their brightest son either to school or to sell sweaters in Mumbai and make money for the family. Then the next, then there's 5 diseases here that, you know, if you have any of them, actually sometimes it's a list of 4, sometimes 5 of different diseases that if you have any of them. So one list, it's scabies, ringworms, carbuncles, and a disease that makes you emaciated. Then another list, we had leprosy, carbuncle, dry gangrene. What did we decide dry gangrene you suffer from? I can't remember either. And then having seizures, you know, like epileptic seizures. So the point here is not these 4 specific diseases, but if somebody has a disease that is either very painful, which makes it difficult for them to participate in Sangha activities, disagreeable, like leprosy or scabies or ringworm, you know, these are quite disagreeable for other people to see or to live with. Seizures would be dangerous. You know, so any kind of chronic disease that could limit, you know, aside from these ones that are mentioned, that could limit somebody's ability to follow the monastic life. Okay, so if somebody's very sick, if this is again it comes into the age limit, if they're old, then it's difficult for them to keep up with everything that needs to be done. Yeah, because you need to be fit, you need to be able to go here and there and do this and that, and you know, and really participate. And if somebody is you know, has a chronic disease and isn't able to do that, not only will it be difficult for the community, but it's going to be really difficult and disturbing for that individual as well, because they will have ordained wanting to do what everybody else is doing, then they can't do what everybody else is doing, then they don't feel good because the community needs to take care of them, and so on and so forth. So people have to be healthy to do this. And let me see if this other one. Yeah, people who also have certain deformities are not allowed to ordain. You know, again, the idea there is if, you know, if somebody is physically, I don't know how to say it, so it's the correct term, other capped, other abled, you know, then it's difficult again for them to keep up with what's going on in the Sangha. So, you know, some teachers are more or less strict with that than others. I know I saw someone who was in a wheelchair, he got ordained in Dharamsala, but, you know, unless you can, I think, really take care of, you know, fully participate in the community, that you would be happier being, you know, practicing Dharma as a serious lay practitioner, and then being able to have your physical needs taken care of in an easy way without, you know, all the turmoil it would cause. Not turmoil, that's too strong of a word, but, you know, what?
Depending on the community.
What?
Depending on the community.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you may need something, you may need nursing, you may need this or that, and everybody, the other Sangha members, busy, they can't come into your room and take care of you. So, you know, of course, if somebody was ordained earlier in their life, and they've been Sangha for a long time. When they get sick and old, of course, the Sangha takes care of them. Yeah, but it's a thing of being eligible for ordination at that time. Yeah, if you can't, if you're very sick, recover before you ordain. If you have a severe injury, recover before you ordain, so that you're more comfortable and the community's more comfortable. Makes sense to people? Yeah. Okay, then number 9 is being mentally deranged. Okay, so
So
yeah.
that was several of them, listing diseases?
Yeah, sometimes this one is included as number 5. Mental imbalance is the 5th of the diseases. I like to include it as something separate. Yeah, because okay, well, let me go back to the physical diseases part of it. Is again, not to mention the inconvenience for the individual, but also at the time of the Buddha, there was one Dr. Jivaka who offered his services to serve the Sangha. So there were some sick people in the community, and they said, let's ordain, because Jivaka, he's giving out beds and food and medicine, and if we ordain, we'll get taken care of. And so they ordained for that reason. But then after they recovered, they disrobed and returned to their families. And so one day, Dr. Jivaka met them on the road and said, aren't you the bhikshus that I treated and, helped to recover? And they said, yeah. And, and we got well, and thank you very much. And now we're lay people again, because that was the reason we ordained. So Dr. Jivaka was not very happy about that, because he was offering his services to the Sangha and assumed people had a pure motivation. Okay, so therefore the Buddha made this condition that somebody who is very ill or injured cannot ordain until they have recovered. Okay, so it's not meant to deny treatment to the ill, but it's emphasizing that you have to have a good motivation and good health to ordain. Now, the reason I like to mention, somebody with mental illnesses separately is because in the Dharma communities I've lived in, there have been people who are mentally ill. And it's very, very difficult. I think I mentioned to you before one center I lived in where one woman ran up and down the halls naked, screaming at night. She had gone off her meds. There was one man at the Dharma center who thought, Dharma will cure you, you don't need you to take your meds anymore. She stopped, and this was the result. So, and then, periodically, there's been so many things, Mamma Mia, that you see at a Dharma center sometimes, because all sorts of people will go. And it's sad, because these people, they are seeking something, but they aren't at a point at that time in their lives where the Dharma can really help them, because mentally they're not stable enough to be able to listen and practice and so on. And so, the Dharma, I think, is very wonderful for helping people with, how can I say this, with, from a Buddhist viewpoint, we're all mentally ill, okay, because we all have ignorance, anger, and attachment. We're all hallucinating. So the Dharma is very effective for helping with all those kinds of things. But when somebody has, a severe mental illness, the Sangha is not a treatment center. Yeah, and we're not a drug and alcohol rehab center. These people need specific help, and they need the help of experts who are trained in that. And we are not those experts. Yeah, so some people may want to join the Sangha because they're seeking help for their problem, or they have spiritual yearning, or you know, maybe they've tried everything else, they want to go off their meds, and they think the Sangha is a safe place for them. So, but it usually doesn't end well. It doesn't end well. And, you know, we have many people applying just to come here for a visit who have different mental difficulties. And so we, you know, we talk to their therapists, we talk to them, we try and schedule a visit of an appropriate length so that they can come and be successful in being here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we just had a situation where somebody applied to come for a month, and you know, one of the nuns called him and interviewed him and could tell that there's some difficulty there. And so she said, you know, five days, like, you know, let's have him come for 5 days. It's short, sweet, you know, and so he hasn't come yet. But a similar kind of thing happened, was it last year or early this year? There's one young man from the East Coast, again with different mental problems. We talked to his therapist, and the therapist was very, very helpful. We agreed with the therapist, I think, for him to come and stay 7 days. He was completely open about his difficulties, wasn't trying to hide anything at all. And he came and he had a wonderful visit. And he returned, I think, with a lot of self-confidence that he could come and be here for 7 days and really fit in with the community. And we felt good about that too. You know, so these kinds of things, doing them, you know, really trying to take care of the people. But I mean, somebody ordaining, it's not a short visit, it's they're moving in, yeah? And so, yeah, we need to really check people's mental health and make sure people get the help that they need, that, you know, we are not equipped to give them often what they need. Okay. Then number 10 is not having obtained permission from their parents. Okay, so when the Buddha, the Buddha's son, Rahula, wanted to ordain as a shramanera, so he was a child at that time, and the Buddha's father, King Sudana, was very sad when his grandson ordained, and said, you know, you should sit to the Buddha, who was his own son, you should obtain permission from their family before you ordain them, because they're children and the parents love them and they want to take care of them, they want to make sure they're okay. And so having their permission is important, yeah? And so, yeah, so then it was set up that people had to have permission from their parents. Then also, then the bhikshunis ordained some women who had not obtained permission of their parents or their husband, because remember, women at that time were definitely under the power of some man in their family. So the women ordained, the families came and said, we're collecting you and taking you home. So again, that was very difficult for the Sangha, difficult for the individuals, and people criticized the Sangha for it. So therefore, you know, the Buddha said that women also have to have permission from their husbands. So this, I think, is one of the conditions that would apply definitely to ancient cultures, where the family was a very strong unit, where if somebody just left their family without the parents' knowledge or permission, or a woman just ran off from her husband, or even, there's nothing that the man has to get permission from his wife, but I would, you know, just some man like ditching his wife and running off, you know, these kind of things would just create a lot of problems in society. And so I think in that kind of social milieu, then it's very appropriate to ask the parents or the spouses. Nowadays, in America, I don't think that's so important. People, you know, at least my generation, we were out of the house by 18, you know, but now people are in the house longer. But, you know, still people are adults, they're financially independent, they run their own lives. So I don't think asking parents' permission is so important. I think it's nice to inform your parents and get their blessing if you can do that, because it just smooths family relationships all the way around. But in some cases, that's not possible. You know, in my own personal case, no way were my parents going to give their permission. Yeah, but I was quite intent, and Lama clearly saw something, so I was allowed to ordain, and eventually, many years later, the whole situation worked out. Okay, so I think, you know, it's going to depend according to the family structure of a society and according to the culture in that society, whether parental permission is needed or not. Okay, then number 11 is being a royal servant. So this includes being in the military, yeah, or in the civil service. So the idea here is, again, you have responsibilities to society. In the military, in the civil service, you are needed by the government, you're needed by the population at times of crisis, and so you can't ordain until your term of duty is finished and completed. Okay. Then number 12 is not having a bowl and robes, or having a bowl and robes that are borrowed. So, you know, the story behind this is one time there was somebody who wanted to ordain. He borrowed somebody else's bowl and robes, got ordained. Then the other monk said, "Please give me back my bowl and robes, I need them." And so then the new monk sat naked by the side of the road. So that caused a few problems. And for that reason, the Buddha set up this regulation that you need bowls, your own bowl, and you need your 3 robes. Okay, then number 13 is motivated by defilement, refusing to say one's own name during the ordination ceremony. Okay, so maybe somebody is quite arrogant, or who knows what, obstinate, because there's a certain point in the ceremony where you have to say your name, and somebody just says, "Forget it, you know, I'm not doing what you say, I'm not going to say my name." So who knows why they're refusing to do it. I don't know if, you know, they don't want to say that they're John Rockefeller IV, or, you know, or Timothy McVeigh Jr., you know. But whatever it is, you know, you have to say your name. Then 14, motivated by defilement, refusing to say the name of your preceptor during the ordination ceremony. So again, I don't know why somebody would do this, but apparently obstinacy or arrogance or who knows what. Forgetfulness. Oh, my preceptor is, yeah. Then 15 is motivated by, so all these are motivated by defilement, you know, some kind of impure mind. So motivated by defilement, refusing to request ordination. Okay, so it's very important at all levels of taking the ordination that you request the precepts. You know, it's important for your mind, and it's important for the Sangha. You know, because when we have to request, it means we're doing this voluntarily. Nobody else is talking us into it. Nobody else is forcing it. So afterwards, if we don't like something, we can't point a finger and say somebody else made me do it, because we have to request not just once, but 3 times. Okay? And traditionally with the request, the first time you're outside of the gate of the monastery and they kind of ignore you, and the second time they tell you to go away, and then the third time, if you're really sincere, then they'll accept you. And I can see the wisdom in this, because sometimes people get what I call ordination fever. Yeah, they like, wow, I want to be a monk, I want to be a nun, so important, I want to dedicate my life to this tomorrow, you know, and I'm giving up everything and I want to do this. And it's a lot of emotion, but not much stability. Yeah, so they do it, they ordain, then 2 days later it's like, what in the world have I done? Yeah, so that's why when I sense somebody has ordination fever, I always say, oh, that's fine, you want to ordain. What are you going to do the day after you ordain? Because often the person has not thought that far. They just want to ordain. Where are you going to live? Who are you going to study with? What practice are you going to do? Yeah, how are you getting the 4 requisites? What do you want to, you know, and many people, they haven't thought about this. So this is, some of you have seen the booklet, Preparing for Ordination. It's in our library, a small booklet, and so it has a lot of those questions to get people to think about what they're doing. Some people are very excited, I want to ordain, they ordain, then they go back and their friends are getting married, their friends are having babies, and they go, oh, I missed out on something really important in life, you know. I do want to get married, I do want to have a child. And then they're filled with regret, they're filled with longing for this kind of thing. Or maybe, you know, that happens when you're young. With other people, maybe it happens you get to middle age. And, oh, I don't have a child. Yeah, who's going to take care of me when I'm old? And all my friends are now grandparents with these adorable little babies bouncing on their laps, and I don't have anybody but my puppy, you know. And oh, I should have ordained when I was younger and had a child. Now I'd have grandchildren and family holidays, and you know, I don't have any family, no Christmas. These holidays are so meaningful to me, I miss having them. So with some people, the holidays with families are so important to them, yeah? And they're in the Sangha, and they, you know, they want to go home for the holidays, and maybe the community says, you seem to have a lot of attachment for the family and the holidays. It seems better that you stay here. Yeah, yeah. And they're, oh, but I want to see the family, and it's so meaningful, and my nieces, and my nephews, and yeah. So people really need to think about all of this kind of stuff before they ordain. Yeah, that's quite important. Well, there was one woman when we had monastic life, Western life as a Western Buddhist nun in Bodhgaya in '96. And there was one woman who came there, and one of my teachers was teaching, and she said to me afterwards, when he walked in the room, all the hair on my body stood on end, just like it says in the scriptures. That's what happens when you meet your guru, and I just had shivers, and I just, you know, I want to ordain, and he's my guru, and on and on and on and on. And so she met with Venerable Lekshe Karma Lekshe Somo and me, and, you know, going on and on about this. And we said, well, it's very nice you have that aspiration, but really you need a little bit more knowledge about the Dharma. You need a steady meditation daily meditation practice. You know, that this happens to be a very good teacher, but you still need to check the teacher out longer. You need to do a lot of preparation. This woman was so mad at us. Oh my goodness. Actually, she met with Venerable Lekshe, Venerable Champasadran, and me. And she was so mad, you know, and stomped off. And, you know, we're just trying to help her. Then years later, she came to a retreat I was doing in Montana. And she asked to see me, and she said, you know, remember all those, you know, those years ago, what you said to me, you know, you were right. And I needed to wait, and, you know, and she had waited, she hadn't ordained. But she said, you know, thank you, even though I didn't want to hear it at that time. So, Okay. Okay, so refusing to request ordination. So maybe somebody, again, with arrogance, you know, I don't want to request anybody for ordination. I am so great. They should be honored to have me in their community, you know. So people have to request with sincerity. And then the 16th one is wearing the clothes of lay people or of people from other religions, or wearing ornaments. So if you're not dressed appropriately as a sangha, you know, as a renunciant, then cannot ordain. So again, here she synthesized the 16 into 5 major points. So first one of the 5 major points is you have to deal very clearly with your relationship to society. Yeah, if you're employed, if you're a soldier, if you're a civil servant, if you're, you know, a slave, if you're a thief, if you're a debtor, if you know, whatever it is where you're not free, but you owe some obligation to somebody else in society, that needs to be cleared up. The second general thing is that people should be sincere in learning the Dharma and the Vinaya. So you can't have somebody who arrogantly won't say their name or answer the questions, say their preceptor's name, request ordination. Then third is your garments should be sufficient, so you must have robes and a bowl to become a monastic. And 4, again, one's intention must be pure. This was one of the concerns with the 13 major ones, but it comes up here too, that you have to have a pure intention. And then 5th is that one is mature enough, one's old enough, so not a young child who's going to cry in the middle of the night or whatever. You have to be able to endure the monastic lifestyle. Okay, so then there's 9 additional ones for women. So, you know, first one, if you're pregnant, you can't ordain. So that, you know, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're breastfeeding your baby, you can't ordain.
If you have a baby, you shouldn't ordain either.
Huh?
If you have a baby, you shouldn't ordain either. I mean, you said pregnant, breastfeeding, but maybe not having a child also would be an obstacle.
Yeah, unless, you know, the child is older and the family, you know, is well taken care of. Then a woman also has to have gone through the 2-year training of a shikshamana. Yeah. And then, now this is a weird one here. Unmarried women under the age of 20, or those who have been married but are under the age of 12. Okay, so if you've been married, you have to be at least 12. Or if you're unmarried, you have to be at least 20. So I think this is because very often children were, you know, even now in India, marriages are arranged. So a child could have been married off when they're 6 or 7 years old to the neighbor, you know, the neighbor's son or daughter. And so you know, if you're as soon as you're 12, if you're a girl, you can ordain. Okay, then prostitutes. So, you know, clearly if you have somebody who's known in the community as a prostitute, that's going to be difficult. If they don't have permission from their husbands, and I would actually make this one, you know, gender equal. At least at the Abbey, we want anybody who ordains to, you know, if they've been married, to have a very clear relationship with their ex-spouse, have a legal divorce, not just a separation, but a legal divorce, have gone through the emotional grieving of separating from that person, and have everything clear. Otherwise, you get ordained, then the spouse, oh my goodness, I just remember we had one man come, remember? One monk come, and he wanted to join the community, and I remember meeting him. I hadn't known him before, and he just said, I don't see any obstacles in me joining this community. I want to kind of move up here right away. And I said, well, come for a visit, and let's see how things go. So he came, and for a few days it was good. And then his ex-wife started calling and started emailing and said, is it appropriate for, my husband or ex-husband to ordain? Do you take in, because they had a child, do you take in people who are abandoning their responsibility to their children? And then started calling him, putting their little girl, who was maybe 4 or 5 years old, on the phone, saying, Daddy, I miss you. Daddy, please come home. This was not good. Yeah, it was very difficult, very hard for him, very difficult for us. And he wound up just leaving without even saying goodbye to us. Yeah, he split. We don't know what happened to him either. But it was horrible for him because he loved his little child. And the kids calling, and then the wife is emailing us. And yeah, so I would say anybody, man, woman, you have to have your previous relationship cleared up. Okay, prostitutes. Okay, then this one I would also make gender neutral. Here it's those who are in love with a man and are prone to melancholy and resentment. And this for a thing for women, I would say woman or man, if you are in love with, I don't care who you're in love with, but you're prone to melancholy and resentment, and I love them and I can't be with them and I miss them so much, and the relationship broke up, but I feel really guilty because I didn't clear things up in the relationship well enough. I really kind of care about them, and they're so unhappy because we broke up, and I feel terrible watching them be so unhappy, but I went ahead and ordained anyway, and maybe I shouldn't, and I should go back and be married with them, and because then they'll be happier and more peaceful, and I won't feel so guilty. And so that kind of person, better don't ordain to start with. Yeah, save yourself some suffering. Then those who lose control of the discharge of urine and excrement, I would make that one gender equal also. Yeah, obvious reasons. And then those who have the same outlet for both urine and excrement. And I think some women, after they give birth, I know in countries without adequate gynecological care, they have fistulas, and so that's a medical condition that needs to be repaired before they can ordain. Okay, so those are the qualifications for somebody to ordain. So it kind of tells you a little bit about, if you're thinking of ordaining, what you need to be clear about, what you need to arrange beforehand. I really recommend looking at the booklet, preparing for ordination, depending on who, you think to ordain with, to really look at what that situation could be like so that you're prepared. And and then there's a lot of questions in the booklet about, how do you think you'd feel about this and that after some time. Okay, so a little time for Q&A.
I have only 6. I must have missed it somewhere.
6 for what?
For the additional for women.
For women? Okay, so the women, pregnant is 1, 2, breastfeeding, 3, practice the Shikshamana trainings, 4, being under the age of 20 if you're unmarried, or under the age of 12 if you are married. 5 is prostitutes. 6 is not having permission from your husband or wife or whoever it is. 7 is those who are in love with somebody and prone to melancholy and despondency. 8 is losing control of the discharge of urine and excrement. And 9 is having the same outlet for both urine and excrement. Anything else? Other questions? Yeah.
Have you seen anything venerable in the past 10 or 12 years that don't fit within these categories, that are either more modern obstacles that people have brought in when they want to ordain, or the ones that don't fit within these 16, but the more modern issues?
Yeah.
Will we have the transgender thing, the LBGYT, would that be?
Yeah. No, because I mean, all these people existed back at the time of the Buddha too. Yeah, that's not something modern.
But it would be a hindrance.
Not being gay or lesbian.
Transgender.
Transgender, there you have to be ordained either in the male sangha or the female sangha. So it would have to be one or the other. Yeah. A practical issue there. I don't know, maybe if there's somebody who really wanted to have a certain kind of job or a certain kind of education, but, you know, again, were longing for it and didn't do it, and then after they ordained, you know, were filled with regret, oh, I should have done that career or something. So, you know, to be on, I mean, I'm just trying to look out what people are possibly attached to, that they, you know, an unreasonable attachment, you know. A reasonable, I mean, we all have attachment. Nobody's attachment free, yeah, at the beginning. So, you know, but attachment that they can deal with it. But if somebody is just always pining away for this or that, or somebody who's always doubting, you know, should I do this, should I do that, should I ordain, should I not ordain? No. If you're sitting on the fence, don't ordain. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
If someone's untruthful about one of these in order to be ordained, does that make them null and void?
Yeah, that creates a lot of problems, and your ordination isn't. Yeah. So, you know, so again, I'm on many of these things. We're just saying, you know, if somebody's sitting on the fence, should I ordain, should I not ordain? Some teachers will say, yes, you should ordain, bring your robes next week, I will ordain you. The person does, and that's fine, and they're happy because they want somebody to tell them what to do and to make the decision for them, and that works for them. I will not do that. Yeah, because I don't think that works well in the long term for people. Okay, so again, you know, you're going to have a difference here between different people who ordain and the other, you know, how much they keep to these criteria and how much they don't, and how much there's other considerations that they may have. Yeah, because I like people to be. I mean, nobody's ever 100% clear, but you know, to have some reasonable thing. But if, you know, one day they're here, I should ordain, the other day, no, I shouldn't, and I should, and I shouldn't, then in my mind, they're not, you know, better they get clear. Yeah? Yeah. One example we had here is somebody who wanted to take care of their elderly parents. Yeah, and if I ordain, can I go home to take care of my elderly parents? Because the parents were in need of help right then and there. I mean, many people when they ordain, yes, you have parents, but your parents are healthy now. Maybe they'll get sick and whatever later. So then we kind of work things out and see what the situation is when that arises. But for people who feel strongly, either now, although their parents don't need help, but they really want to, when their parents do need help, go back and take care of their parents, if they feel that that's a real strong thing that I must do. Then I would really want to discuss with them quite a bit before they are ordained, what's going to happen. There's one woman, remember, who was here visited us for some time. She went to Dharamsala and ordained. She was at Tusamling for a year, and then her parents got sick. Now she's still in the East Coast. You know, her father died. Now she's taking care of her mother. Her mother's living in assisted living, but she has to manage the estate and manage the caregivers and everything like that. And so she's doing the best she can, but she's kind of out in no nun's land, without a monastery, without Dharma friends. Sometimes she can get into New York City and sometimes not. Yeah, so somebody who felt very strongly that I definitely want to go help my elderly parents, then I would really want to talk with them about that. Or if somebody had elderly parents, right now who needed care, then, to really talk with them about that and how is that going to work? Because if you feel so strongly that you need to be with your parents, then it's better to be with your parents. If you can arrange something where you can be here at the monastery, occasionally visit your parents, that's something different. So you have to see on a case-by-case basis, how people are and what's important to them in their lives. Mm-hmm.
Has it ever happened where someone ordains and then either their parents or their spouse dies and they have a lot of debt, and then the debt is passed to them? These would just be parents.
Yeah, that I don't know about, because the debt be passed to the children? Usually, the estate usually has to pay off whatever debts there are. But I don't know if they can then make the children pay the parents' debts. Venerable Jigme is shaking her head. Yeah. Anybody know? Any lawyers?
If you have a debt,
Uh-huh.
you have to pay on your own, unless you sign as
A guarantee?
for
Yeah, for somebody
because
else.
The debt pays itself, they have insurance on. They have their insurance, and when you die, it's done. That's in Mexico.
Okay, that's in Mexico. Mhm.